Hi everyone, it's Kasia from Tarot Map, and this is another episode in my Inspired Tarot Map series. And this time I'm hosting one of our own tarot community, Queen Auset. Hi.
Hi.
And I have invited you, Queen Auset, because there's, first of all, this huge situation, repetitive situation that is going on with Black Lives Matter and diversity and all these issues, which I would like to just hear your opinion on. And also because you have been in tarot community forever. And we just talked before that we met through Kelly Fitzgerald, two of us, and we became friends. And I also wanted to pick your brains a little bit about your take on tarot and how you work with tarot cards. So we will have probably like about 2 parts to this interview.
Okay.
But the first question that I usually ask my guests is about the ancestors and, you know, who's got your back, where you're from. And so if you could just tell us your story, that would be awesome to know.
First of all, Kasha, I want to say thank you. When the world was going to hell in a handbasket, you were the first person to reach out to me just to see if I was okay. And that is so important to me, that we, maintain that human connection. And no matter the distance, you stepped in as a friend. And I really, really hold that close to my heart. So those of you who are listening, when you talk about allies, this is what I mean about having an ally, someone who's going to think about you as a human being and your welfare. Okay. To answer your question now about ancestors, I was born in England, Jamaican parents, grew up in Jamaica. And, it's pretty much not too hard to figure out who my ancestors were. My lineage goes back to Ghana, as well as to Ireland. Doing some genealogical work, I found out who was who in my life. And right now, my gatekeeper is my father, who transitioned 7 years ago. What we do is revere those who have transitioned, those who have passed on. And our connection, our communication is not like Hollywood. Okay? It's not to be expected like that. But it's almost like an energetic atmospheric shift when they are present fully. Now, for me, my ancestors are always around me. They are my first line of defense. They are who I tap into, ask for guidance from, give me peace and clarity, all of that before I go anywhere else, before I do anything else. Establishing the relationship with your ancestors actually begins before they've made the transition. So that's another piece of advice. For those of us who have the elderly within our homes right now, get to learn their stories. When they transition, the communication can be a lot more difficult. But at this time, start having those dialogues, start having those conversations so you can start strengthening your own ancestral lineages and trees. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and also I wanted to ask you in this case, like, would you say that you work also with ancestors that are not really your kind of blood ancestors as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that would be part of your religion then, or is it also ancestral work, but it goes just beyond just the blood, or maybe it is blood because we don't know, right? If you go back and back and back.
Yeah, so it goes beyond just blood. It goes much deeper than that because, we are all interconnected and things have gotten, mixed and mingled across the line. In my experience in doing ancestor work, we call them Egun. Egun are those on the other side. Now, not everyone who transitions become an ancestor. That's the first thing we need to remember, okay? An ancestor is someone who has elevated, that we can tap into for guidance. As you grow, as you mature, as you walk this path in life, your ancestor connection can actually change a little bit. sometimes, you know, as you're going along the way, maybe you're always connected to your grandmother. And then one day, let's say when you get married, you find that your grandfather comes in, right? And then let's say maybe you have a child and then an aunt comes in, or then someone from several generations back comes forward. Now, for me, with my work, my gatekeepers have changed through the years. Of course, when my father was with me up until 7 years ago, his mother and father were my gatekeepers. I only know of his mother from the other side. She transitioned when I was about 3 months old, so I never knew her in life. But I knew her, and I was able to confirm who she was by having conversations with my father. Yeah. So I knew that true connection. But then I have had connections with people who would not be considered blood ancestors. Now, on my Gaelic side, my Celtic side, it is actually an ancestor that taught me how to read Tarot, or I should say introduced me to the Tarot. And we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. Okay. So that answers my question, because I was curious if that goes also. You know, I did this workshop with Sharon Blackie, and when she does ancestral work, she actually doesn't ask you to work with the closest 7 generations. She asks you to imagine from the 7 generations back. Because often that's where your psyche, or maybe when actually the true answers or true connection can come through, if you're not attuned to your ancestors. So sometimes people have issues with ancestors, and or they misunderstand, like you said, not every ancestor means that's a spirit that works with you or supports you. Or, yeah. So that was interesting. I never met this type of ancestral work before, when she just goes, no, not your closest ones. You work with 7 generations
further back. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. That was interesting meditation. Okay, so also I wanted to ask you about your name. I don't know if this is part of your tradition, or you chose it, or were you given your name, Queen Auset. Can you tell me a bit more about your name?
Sure. So my name in my tradition is not one that's public. And that's why I'm known as Oya's girl, right? So Oya is an Orisha, but Queen Auset is a name that was given to me, I guess you can say, in a dream during a meditation. Several dreams over several nights involved a deep meditation, a gem elixir, just a lot of things were shifting in my life at that time. And this energy came to me and said, you are Auset. Auset is the Kemetic name, believe it or not, for Isis.
Yeah.
Right? So everyone knows Isis, but Auset is her true name. Queen is a title that's bestowed upon women of a certain, when you get to a certain age. Right? So
what age is it?
Older than you.
Am I there yet? Not yet. Okay.
Maybe. No. So it's a term of endearment that many of us share with each other. In the Black community, as I said, a woman gets a certain age, she's had children, or maybe not. She's referred to as a queen. Some of us refer to, my belly dance mate, we would refer to each other as queens, just as a term of endearment, a term of upliftment. And it was a title that was bestowed upon me by me, right? Like, if I could carry myself as anything in this world, I'm going to carry myself like a queen, Now, of course, I did have a few people who were uncomfortable with that, but then that's that European mindset. Yeah.
Because it's when you kind of think of European names, you don't get that,
right.
queen or king and the name, or usually you would want to skip the queen and king and just say the other part, right? But I like this, and I like that as a term of endearment as well, above certain age, because I think that's how I want to feel when I, grow older and mature and kind of gain into my power, really.
Right.
Fits the queen, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. So thanks for sharing that. And this diversity in tarot, because you one of the people who who have spoken a lot about it. But right now, with what we see online, there's this big, uprising, which of course it's necessary. But I also, as a white person, can see that sometimes white people can be very, like I call them like tyrants, that there is just not enough mind involved, or
Yeah,
people just forget certain things, and suddenly a lot of especially I think white people are crazy and calling for the diverse decks, and we both agree that yes, diverse decks, of course. I want to see you depicted in a deck, I want to see me depicted in a deck,
right.
perfect. But when we start doing the censorship, the limitation on art, the
Mm-hmm.
black and white chop,
Right.
this is good, this is bad, I start getting really pissed off with it. I don't like it. I want to see artists being free to show their lives how they know it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And as I mentioned in one of the comments or my video, I felt like if I wanted to make a deck, I'm a white chick living in Poland, 99.9% white. I see 10 people of color in general, not only saying about black people, all color people. I can count them on my fingers of my both hands. Would I be considered like some fucked up chick because I'm depicting my reality the way I see it? So I also want to take this into the consideration for people to, like, before they jump into judging everybody, to just kind of stop and think for a while. But
Yes.
there is a lot of buts, right? So
Mm-hmm.
can you
Mm-hmm.
tell me, first of all, like, what are your thoughts on diversity in general, and how you kind of, looking at tarot community and tarot publishing all these years, like, what do you think about it?
Oh, okay. So I always say this is a double-edged sword. First of all, I know that tarot was not created with people of color in mind. We get down to the bare bones.
Yeah.
And I can accept that. It is a tool that I use for self-development and growth. It is not a tool that I use because I see myself in the deck. I do not put my sense of self or my sense of identity into a piece of art per se, right? I think that art is supposed to reflect or call out something that you have deep within your psyche without it having to have a racial tone or term on it. Okay. But we live in a world that's supposedly a little bit more modern than when the first decks were created. People have traveled, right? You travel around, you get more experience when you travel around. So even where you live, where you say you can count on both hands the number of people of color around you, you know that people of color exist.
Yeah.
If you are doing tarot, you know that people of color exist. You know that the world is expansive. So the expectation should be, well, these people should be included in part of the dynamic as well. Why are they not allowed to express or bring something to the table? Why are they not allowed? Why are we not allowed to share our experiences, our points of view with you as well? That possibly could add another layer to your readings, okay? I don't like the divisiveness that occurs, like all black decks, all non-black decks, all of that. But I see that where the problem comes in is where people are creating a deck and they don't have a lot of knowledge of what they're going to include in that deck and then call it a diverse deck. That's problem number one. Or they call it a diverse deck and 1 out of 78 cards is a person of color or non-white,
The devil.
non-European. Usually it's the devil.
Or Nine of Wands.
Right. Someone who, of
Survival.
course, they're right. Is always has to be depicted as someone who is oppressed.
Yeah.
Why would a person of color be depicted as oppressed? Right? Why not? I mean, the modern witch, you know, I give Lisa Stir, I have it sitting here right now. I give her kudos for opening that up a little bit. But
Yeah.
then, you know, it's not a deck that's going to appeal to everybody for that reason. But that's another thing as well. People have to understand that not every deck created is going to appeal to everybody, right? I do want artists to have creative license. Do what you feel to do. But then you want to ask yourself, am I doing this because I just want to create art? Or am I doing this because I want to create art and I'm hoping I can make some money off of it too?
Yeah. Or
right?
create art that can maybe shift something or shift the perception.
Right.
But also, you know, like we also have this power as clients, customers to purchase, right? Something that resonates with us, or not purchase something that we think is not resonating first of all, or we're not agreeing with it politically, or however, you know, because it really comes down to like you've got the power to buy or not to buy. And I think we spoke a little bit earlier about it, about let there be all sorts of decks, diverse decks, Asian, black, white, yellow, red, gay, cuts, lesbians, bisexual, binary,
everything.
Anything. Because if you're an artist and you depict your world that you know.
No.
You start putting every race, and you don't want to offend anybody and include everybody. It's just really like ridiculous idea to even think of it.
Right.
You know, like if you just want to really do it just to be so inclusive and be so amazing and put everybody in it, you don't even know. Like you said, like you have to ask really if you don't know.
Right.
And you probably won't know, because it's not possible for a person to know how an Asian person would like to be depicted. You know what I mean? Like
exactly. Yeah.
But the publishing houses, the power of my money, what I spend on, the inequality in how like black artists or people of color in general versus white artists, how discrepant and contrasting numbers these are. And we were laughing that, you know, it's not like 60-40 or no, it's not even 90-10 probably. It's probably like 96 to 4% maybe.
Exactly.
And I think here is where a lot of people with privilege like myself can put some in, like, you know, some, what is it? Like,
you have some input. You have some input. You can make a change. I have, let me see, is it this one? I have a deck. I don't know if it's Cosmic Deck. It's just brand new, so it's not this one. So one of my biggest questions has always been, when a deck is created, what is the purpose of putting one card of a person of color in it? Because I think to me that is even more insulting than not being included.
But I'm inclusive. I put you. Yeah, I know.
Right,
I know exactly.
Right? That's the question. I think that's more hurtful than not being included in the deck.
Yeah.
Right? Because that goes to tokenism.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I always say, I will go back to that because I know exactly what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a new one. I don't even know if it's called Star Temple. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh, I don't know this one.
Yeah.
Is it the tarot or is it an oracle?
No, it's an oracle.
An oracle, yeah.
Okay. I open it up. First card. I don't know. Hopefully I can get this for you guys to see that.
Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's the only card in the deck.
I wanted to say it's pretty card. I like it. But I do like the image, but yeah, it's the only one.
Right. Okay. So my question is, when people are creating decks, what's the point? Because this is like a slap in the face. Right? I didn't expect to see that image. First card, I look at the back of the card, I don't see anything that looks, back of the box, to see anything that looks like it would include me.
Yeah.
I've already purchased the deck because I like the idea of the deck.
Yeah.
But then you throw that card in there.
Yeah.
That's
like, I know. It's interesting, right? Because it's like people like put yourself into the shoes. Like if you had to, because I was thinking, you know, if there were only, let's say, decks that I wouldn't see myself depicted in. I thought like, you know, for example, I thought of Dust to Onyx just as an example because I love the artwork. It's just expressive. It's a bit more like dreamlike. You know, it has this
Right.
really sense that I can connect to it. But imagine like this Afro-Brazilian, let's say, or like, you know, the deck that, again, I could work with it because it's like Rider-Waite-Smith, right? So I could, but the point being that like, if it was all the decks I would look at would only have, let's say, Black people or Asian people or any other, and I couldn't see myself in it, or there would be only one cut, it's really, I find it hard to connect emotionally with. Like, I can work with it, as you said, I could, because I love tarot, and tarot really goes beyond race and color, and you know, when you look from the spiritual perspective or development, you can work with it, and I know that you like to work with it this way too, but it's like fucking annoying.
Yes.
So you would like to, I think it's really important to know that, yes, these decks have to be diverse because we live in a diverse world, but at the same time, that there is really spectrum for everything. And I think what I would like to see is to, for Black artists, people of color in general, to be supported more through the publishing companies, so that they actually can depict their realities, their world, their gods, their, you know, beliefs, how they see fucking white America, or, you know, mixed America. I was just talking about this with you, you know, and she said, Harley said she's a bisexual white woman, and she made a deck that resonates with her. And I dig it. Like, why would I beat her up for it, you know?
Right, exactly.
And I want to see it from bisexual Black woman. And,
right. You know, I think with the publishing companies, they need to open themselves up. Well, can you put me on pause for a second? My phone is ringing.
Yeah. Pause recording. Okay, we're back.
Okay. I think, again, the reason why there aren't so many diverse decks, we have to think about who the buyers of these decks are. And the publishing companies are appealing to those who are spending the money. And unfortunately, the primary buyers of these decks are white women. Okay? And so they have a small window of who they are going to provide diverse decks to.
But would you say the white women buy those decks because there are so many white decks? Would it be different? Would Black women buy the decks if they were more geared towards Black community, or we don't know that? Like, fuck, you said that a lot of, you know, that a lot of Black people spend a lot of money, so like, fucking do it, right?
Right, exactly. So here in my group, and I learned this term from one of my white tarot students. She says, Queen, there are white women, and then there are women who happen to be white. Okay? Meaning there are white women who have their own narrow perspective, their own view of certain things, and that's what they want. They don't want to see decks with people of color in them. They don't want to see a person in a wheelchair. They don't want to see anybody on crutches. They don't want to see, you know, the king be depicted as a female. They don't want to see that. They don't want to see decks that are all feminine. They don't want to see decks that are all male. They don't want to see gay decks. They don't want to see any of that.
Yeah.
And then you have women who happen to be white, who are open to diversity and inclusivity. Why? Because in their world, that exists. And you might think, well, you know, you live in the States. Isn't it all the same? No, it isn't.
Yeah.
Right? This meat suit that we wear, unfortunately, is how, you know, people first judge us. But when you take the time to get to know people, you really do realize at the end of the day that our stories are so much the same.
Yeah.
You know, I have a representative. She's 10 years older than I am, older white woman, and we have the same story about our mothers. And I told her, if I put your mother, my mother, and I have a male friend, white male friend's mother in the same room, and we turn the lights off, and they started telling their story, we wouldn't be able to tell whose mother was who.
Mm.
Outside of knowing the voices, we wouldn't. You see
Yeah.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So but here's the thing, what's happening though with Tarot, opening it up, I find that more people are starting to use it for self-development as opposed to predictive things. But I'm talking about deep self-development, like what can I do to empower myself? What can I do to get back on top? What can I do to regain my sense of self?
Mm.
Not because I need to show off my psychic prowess and, I've been a reader for 10,000 years and I'm a psychic person and spiritual guru and all of that crap. I'm talking about everyday women who are coming out of broken relationships, have, poor relationships with their kids, they're trying to get back into the workforce, they're dealing with health issues. This is the shift that I'm seeing with these women. Like, this is a tool that tells me, you know what, hey, I can do this. It's just that the publishing companies and such haven't kept up with that need.
Mm. Yeah, and I think it's not only with tarot, right? Like we've seen a lot of videos from this book community,
The book club, the
published
books, yeah.
authors. Probably, I would imagine with artists. Maybe it's the least
Yeah.
visible in music because music industry is a bit different. I don't know if it's less or not, but you see a lot of amazing Black artists.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So
And it's in every area of our lives, this ugly beast exists.
yeah.
And we have learned to dance with the beast. We have learned to navigate the minefield of this beast. And it's not until we actually do sit back and say, oh my gosh, I'm the only person of color in this group.
Yeah.
Right? Oh my goodness. There is no one here that looks like me. There are no decks with me in them. So what do you do when you don't have any deck that has you in it? You have a choice. You can not do any readings, not learn tarot, not work with oracle, or you can work with what is given to you.
Yeah. Or you make one. Or you make one.
or you make one. You make one. But
yeah.
Here's the thing. This is the beauty of, I'm gonna have to say, because I can only speak about women of color, and I mentioned this before. That Romance Angels deck, that ugly ass hot paint box by the one who we shall not name. That deck is read by a lot of people of color in their readings. Like, they don't care about the imagery. Like, they know what's there, but they get the nuances, they get to the depth of it, right? But it's unfortunate that we have to work with the stuff that's thrown at us.
Yeah. And at the same time, you do connect to certain decks that might be all white, let's say. But
yeah.
The artwork, like I would connect to Dusty Onyx, which is all black, but it's just such an amazing just experience from the, how it's produced, how it's made, how it looks.
Right.
It's like, to me, like really amazing deck. But at the same time, some others, let's say black only decks, I could use them, but I'm not feeling drawn to get them, I'm not feeling drawn to buy them because exactly what you say, like I don't see myself depicted in it as well. And I also was wondering, maybe it's not the right time to ask this question because, but we were both mentioning this also, if you set this kind of limit, all decks must be diverse, then also black creators would have to put white people. I was laughing. They could put us like in the devil cut in the beginning, only one.
Right.
Okay.
Only one, exactly.
Then
and see,
like maybe nine of swords or something.
Right. But then you have to think, like I was telling you as well, we have to get rid of that word must as well, right?
Yeah.
And I was telling you, in my own blood family, I have people that look like you.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right? Exactly.
From one end of the spectrum all the way. So it's more than just It's not so easily defined.
Exactly. And I think it's that's why I thought, like we were also saying, you know, that there's like idiots, there are black idiots, there are white idiots, there are yellow idiots, red, and every other race idiots. And you still have people who I think like want to create a world where we can all exist and live and cooperate and be friends. And I think there is really no differences between us, but how we look outside, like the skin color, and like it's very, I think we also women I'm talking, I'm sorry guys if you're watching this later, because we spent 2 hours with Queen Auset talking about everything before the interview, and we covered a lot of issues. We're going to talk about them, but it's interesting because it's such a deep subject. And yes, we can you know, laugh now and try to make it better, but yeah, it's deep, it's hurtful, it's frustrating. I was mentioning the Jane Elliott's exercises, which I was watching because as a white person, I thought, like, what can I do with my fucking privilege? You know, I'm not going to get rid of my privilege. It's there if I want it or not. And like, I have to learn how I can use it for the better, how I can actually be aware of when I'm using it unconsciously. And rather than go like, you know, and try and fix black people, help black people, how can I fucking help myself to be a better human being, you know?
Exactly, yeah.
That's what I can do. That's what I can do, really. And that will probably help you much better than me trying to help you without knowing what you need, because I don't even ask you.
Right, and that is why I want to ask people to just, who have you spoken to? Right? So everybody, I see all of this energy where everybody's doing this and they're reading these books and, you know, Auset, I read this book, Auset, I did this exercise, Auset, I saw this video. And I'm thinking to myself, so you want a gold star from me? You want a pat on the back? What do you want from me? Once again, you want something from me. Once again, you want me to put myself second because your feelings come first. Yeah. Just do the damn thing. Break it down and be human. Take a look at yourself in this whole spectrum, in everything, and see what changes you can make if you want to make them, right? Yeah. We call it privilege because you have that power to use at your will. You can weaponize your privilege. See, that's where the problem comes in, when you weaponize it.
When you don't know about
using
it in the most unconscious ways.
Yes. And that's where the problem is. Well, so now even with the shift that's happening, you know what, honestly, Kaja, I don't even feel a shift. I felt this upswing and I feel like things are dying down. Because it takes a lot of stamina to do this. I've been at this for 58 years. From I came out the womb, I've been in this fight. Yeah. Most of you have been at this for 2 weeks and have petered out already. Think about it, right? What has been accomplished? And so for me, where I'm saying, like, what I'm seeing is a lot of
talk,
lip service. Don't pay me the lip service. This is systemic. This is something that we need to get to the root of. And this is everybody across the board. And this is how you choose to spend your money, what you choose to invest in, who you choose to vote for, who you choose to support. And I'm talking about all the way across the board. And as a spiritual community, that should give you an extra rung on the ladder to support you, because I'm making the assumption that you've done the work to grow as a human being. Yeah. But unfortunately, I'm finding within the spiritual community even more so that it's not that way, that sense of entitlement is strong, and there are people who are going to hold on to that simply because of the color of their skin.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like, I can speak from my own experience. You know, I was called out on racism or on being, you know, like using my white privilege as like, oh no, I didn't, you know, like the white fragility a little bit, and kind of, you know, doing all this like, oh no, I didn't mean it, and kind of being really defensive about shit. But I think that's would be my pledge to people of my color, that it happens, like we have it, and we often don't know about how deep that sits. And
Right.
not to stop because somebody called you out, or you felt like you wanted to do something good, and oh, but they were not nice to me, and you know, like nobody has to be
Right.
fucking nice. Like it's our
Exactly.
own education, and yeah, it's better to just keep working and finding out for yourself.
Mhm.
Like I'm not doing it for Queen Auset, I'm doing it for me,
Mhm.
so that I can fucking live with myself. And
Right.
by the doing it for me is like you working for yourself, like
Oh,
we create a better world, we can have connection, we see that we the same, really, like deep down, like this fucking, like we queens.
right. Exactly.
And I think it's really important, because I felt like sometimes it's hard to explain, maybe, or carry on, because you
Mhm.
kind of keep trying, let's say. And if you don't educate yourself, you feel like you should be rewarded because you're trying to do good. And it's just, nobody says, oh, how nice of you.
Right.
This is already a part of the problem, right? Of the
Yes.
deep, subtle,
So
deep,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Because Kasha, I mean, you know me. I'm going to ask you why now. I'm going to ask you what's in it for you,
Yeah.
because I've always been Black since you know me. So
Yeah.
why
And
now?
and when I asked you for the interview, you said like fuck off. I didn't
It's
say
like,
fuck off, but you said kind of like, fuck off. And I kind of thought like, if I asked, you're probably going to say this, which I'm not going to take personally, but I thought, because yes, exactly, why now? And do you remember last time we caught up, like last year, and
yeah, uh-huh.
shit, I don't actually have any Black creator on my inspired tarot map. Do you remember we were
Exactly.
talking about,
Yes.
and I said
Yeah.
like I have one, I invited
Hmm.
Ashanti, she was my first, and for now still the only one. Now you the second one, but I was just going, you're going to rip my head off. It's okay, I'm fine with this, I will try. But I know that if we haven't had the relationship, you would just rip my head off, and you would
Yes.
say, no, go away,
Yes,
lazy girl.
exactly.
Move
Go
on,
right.
move on,
You
move
know
on.
that. Yes. You
But then
know,
you also said something beautiful as well, that actually people often talk about Black people or about you, but not with you. And
yes.
I thought like it's important, and I know that why now, because this is probably like, so much everybody talks about it. And I thought like, wow, like I want to show your perspective as well, not tell other people about you and what you said to me in the private. And like, I thought like, why not? If I have this option and I have this platform and I can record it, and yes, maybe I should have done it before, but I haven't. But well, now I have. I hope that
I
it's my
appreciate it.
opinion.
Yes, yes. I appreciate it. And that's one of the things, we talk about. I mean, I have to sigh because I keep going back to that, like, oh my gosh, they finally have heard me. I don't know if you can understand what that feels like, to finally to be heard. Like, that is such, every time I think about that, it makes me very emotional, because I feel like I've been screaming for 50 plus years, screaming, screaming, screaming. And to be finally heard, that it creates such an emotional response within me. And that, you sit with that for a little bit, like, oh my gosh, they finally have heard me. They finally have heard me. They're finally listening. And so from my perspective, it's like, okay, Auset, what are you going to say now?
Mm.
What are you going to say now? And it's not that I'm at a loss for words, but every day I want to be expressive. I want to release all the stuff that I've had in me. And I feel like, okay, everyone else is vomiting all this stuff. What good would it do? Okay, so it's good for me to release it within context. But now I really want us to be listened to. We're creating decks, we're creating oracles, we're doing a lot of things within this tiny community that many people are not even interested in. Either A, the color of our skin, or B, the numbers are just not interested, And then, but we keep at it because we feel like we have something of value to add. And for the most part, how we're seen or perceived by the general public doesn't define who we are. We're just going to keep doing it, you know? And so, you know, in 2019, 2018, 2019, 2020, I always say, and now I know why this mantra just stuck with me: never underestimate the power of a grain of sand. Right? Because a lot of people feel like they have to do big things to make that impact. But I just want you to visualize having a grain of sand in your eye.
Yeah. And I think, you know, how we also mentioned that for people who want to do the work on themselves, who don't want to, you know, be patted, just who want to cooperate, who actually see beyond the surface differences.
Yes.
There is, like, the time is now, like, we can and we want to all create a better world. And I think, you know, you in a sense probably can choose, right, either step up to some form of like and maybe, I don't know, self-appointed in a sense teacher, when you choose to take the issue a little bit differently than just express your anger, which you also are entitled to, of course. Like, you can get pissed off and frustrated and express it, but also, like, what can you do with it right now as well, right? Like, and I think you also at the queen age, and there is this also sense of, I think, strength that comes with maturity as well. You know, maybe if you were 20 years old, you would be having different story, right? But you've seen so much, you lived through so much, you lived with white, with yellow, with all the people. Like, I think in some sense, what I always admired in you, that you could step up in a sense for yourself, you know, even though you have all these feelings, but you can see them and allow them to be there, but also see the other perspective. And I think we need people like this in any of the fucking color, like, because it can easily swap the other way around. But will it be a better world? No. You know, it will be better world maybe for Black people, awesome, but it's still not going to be, nobody will be truly expressively happy, you know. And I don't know if we can create a fucking perfect world. I don't know. Maybe not, but the grain of sand. Yeah, I just wanted to finish that the grain of sand that you were saying, like these little actions, we see the changes. They slow, they fucking maybe way too slow, but you know, sometimes they get faster, then they slow down, then they fasten up, then there is another level, but we never really go totally back. I hope we can move forward with 2020 from astrology. You know, I know it's just this time, like, it's really when all these planets will move into Aquarius. I'm just curious, like, I'm thinking, like, it's social justice, it's revolution, you know, it's like, I think it's unstoppable now. So people should really get on board with, like, knowing where they stand and why they stand where they stand.
Right, exactly. And as I said, you know, this is not, it's not as simple as a black and white thing. It's not that, okay? But there is no gray area either. Okay, it's about, like I said, what is right and what is wrong. And as human beings, you know what is wrong. And if you sit with all this crap that's going on around us, you know that inherently that is wrong. So we must do something as a race, human race, to change that, right? To change it. And you can't be afraid to use your voice and use your votes and use your dollars, because that's what you have right now.
That's the power,
You have the power, right? Support artists of color. They are there, right? How could you call yourself a spiritually evolved human being and not know anything about a culture outside of your own? How?
And especially in the US, where they so intertwined as well, I think, right?
Yes.
And it's just kind of so one-sidedly thought. That's really interesting. From my perspective, you know, like, we talked at some point, but like how my history changed, you know, because we were under like Russian occupation for so long, but I was taught different history. And then when I went to the high school, they changed the books, and suddenly I was learning a totally different history, you know, the true history. Before that, it was the propaganda history. And it just was funny to experience, you know, like the whole shift of systems. But also my point was that I experienced the shift of systems, which was nearly impossible to imagine before, you know,
Right.
communism
Right.
to fall, the whole Russian Empire to kind of release the hold of all the other countries which were in Russia. And it was nearly impossible. It was on in Poland for 40 years. You know, my whole parents' generation, grandparents' generation were kind of tainted by this
Yes.
in social idea, beautiful in theory. It's just human beings are not ready for socialism,
No.
unfortunately. So it turns quickly into communism, and
Mm-hmm.
it was interesting, but it changed. It fucking
It
shifted. The
changed.
walls
Yeah.
have fallen. I'm just thinking, you know, now maybe
Mm-hmm.
that democracy, that kind of this system, which will in, it might take longer because everybody is economically
Yeah.
attached to it.
Yes.
But I think it must shift.
But
Otherwise,
like I
we
said,
do.
it's systemic though. It's systemic,
Yeah, and we
right?
do
It,
if it
this
doesn't
is
shift.
something, this is a situation where systems have been put into place. I mean, it's so much more, and it's time. Those systems are now outdated. Okay, they've gone. They should never have been put into place. But again, it comes down to economics, you know, because it didn't actually become a problem until slavery was abolished and ended. So when you know that your livelihood is going to walk out the door, you're going to do anything you can to hold on to that livelihood.
Yeah.
And so you create a system that's going to help you retrieve that livelihood.
Yeah.
That's where the KKK comes in, right? Because you're losing revenue from
Yeah.
a slave that has run away or escaped.
Yeah.
And so it's still that mindset that we are living under in the States.
Yeah.
Only now they look a little bit different, right? But it's still the mindset. So no matter what you do, if you don't change the mindset, we'll never get into this place where we can see things better.
I agree.
You
And it's
know?
quite so frustrating, I think, for you guys, especially because you keep seeing the revolution after revolution, but the whole system keeps putting the racist ideology, like
Oh,
kind of sustaining
exactly.
it. And,
Right. Keeps feeding it, keeps sustaining it, right?
yeah.
And so what happens, people become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
You know, and this is across the board. Like I said, I'm a foreigner, right? I'm not even a Black American. I still have a green card. And the dynamics in my interaction with even other African Americans is a little bit different because in their eyes, I'm seen as an outsider. My experience of the slave trade is just a little bit different than theirs, right? Mm-hmm. But even within this country, I have been told by white people, I once dated a white guy, and he told me that the Black people in the south of the country are so much better. They're so much more nicer and docile than the whites in the north. And I really didn't, you know, being in this country so long, that's not even something I even thought about until one day I looked at it and it was like, oh my gosh, we're still thinking this way? Mm. You know, this is the late 90s. We still are in that mindset. Again, if you can't change the mind, and so this is where we go to the Tarot. This is the beauty of it. If you could use it for that self-development and breaking down whatever that knot is that has formed itself within you and really do that internal work. And I mentioned this, I see spreads on social media all the time. And I love the interpretations, but I always wonder, are you applying that spread to your life? Because if you were, some serious growth would be happening. And this is how I know that growth is not happening. When the same message keeps coming up for that same person. That means you haven't done anything except put down the cards, take a nice photo, and kept it moving.
Yeah.
Start to do the work.
Yeah. Right? And I think once we start with ourselves, because yeah, exactly like how I mentioned, you know, like I can do the work for myself. Mm-hmm. If I do the work for myself, that definitely would benefit all other beings if it's a true work. And as we were speaking also, that the truth has the ring to it, like
Yes.
when something is true because you feel it with your whole body.
Mhm.
It's a
Mhm.
visceral experience that somebody is
Yeah,
not bullshitting and somebody is not just doing something for, like
for sure.
yeah, for show or for
Right.
appreciation from someone, or that something is important. And I think that's, everybody can feel it, every human being can sense it. It's a
Yes.
universal, I think, experience to all of us. So can we go back to this tarot story? We leave the
Yes.
politics for now and do the second part of the
Yes.
interview, because another 7 hours pass.
Uh-huh.
Well, you said something about in the beginning about the dreams and how that kind of tarot came from one of the ancestors. Can you tell us a
Yes.
little
Oh
bit
my
more?
gosh. I picked up my first tarot deck. Was living in Germany, but I went on a trip to Paris at the time. And I went to a place near Champs-Élysées, and the Aquarian deck was on a
Okay.
shelf. Art Deco style, all of that. Picked it up, had no clue what to do with it, all of that. And all those years, I didn't do anything with it, just looked at the pictures, wasn't even curious about what it meant or anything like that. And it was several years later, I was married at the time, and I'm going to say I think my husband threw away that deck, all of that. When you tend to go through a shift, I think parts of yourself start to open up, and reconnecting to who I am started to come to the forefront. And I started having dreams about this one particular ancestor. And as cliche as it may seem, I've had it verified. Emerald green dress, red hair, very fair skin. And her name was Marie. Marie. Emerald green dress, white, red hair. And she put these cards in front of me, and it was the TDM, the Marseille deck. I didn't know. I didn't know. And she said, this is what you're supposed to do. This is what you're supposed to be learning. And I left the TDM. I looked at it, tried to do it on my own. I couldn't comprehend it, couldn't understand it. And then I came across that ugly yellow box. Come on, we as human beings, we learn better when we have a storybook and pictures, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, I had that one tarot deck, that ugly yellow box. Oh, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years. It had become so enmeshed with the oils in my hand that it became twice as thick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was,
yeah, the group.
that was the deck, that was how things started for me. Just learning about the imagery and how they resonated with me. I wasn't even thinking at that time, like, oh, I don't see a person of color in this deck.
Yeah.
I wasn't even thinking like, damn, I don't see too many females in this deck. Like, I wasn't even thinking. It was just like, what is the mystery behind this tool? What can I learn? How can it help me develop into who I am? And then of course, one thing led to another. I started buying a couple of other decks, but that still was never a premise. That was always still my favorite deck to go back to. Okay.
These are special, hey, when you have this one deck that you use for so long. I'm yet to create one because I've swapped these decks and changed them all the time.
All the time, yes.
I'm just going from one to another, and I love it. But I would love to have one that it would be just so special that I thought for a while it will be that TDM. And actually, my Jeanne Dodel Tarot de Marseille feels a little bit like
like that.
It was a bit dirty and
yeah.
But I just changed too much. So sometimes I think people probably think I lie that I'm a tarot reader because all my decks are fairly new. I change them so often.
Yeah. So I am a self-taught tarot reader. Okay.
Yeah.
Back in the early 90s, I'm also certified through the ATA, which is no longer in existence per se. One of the people who certified me was Bonnie Cehovet. Cehovet. You've seen her name on books.
Yeah, wasn't she
Yeah.
one connected to this big
The
website?
yes, that is defunct now. Yes.
Because she was doing a lot of reviews also, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yes, yes, yes. That one too.
what is this tarot? It's not working
Eclectic,
anymore.
eclectic, eclectic.
Eclectic tarot,
Yes,
exactly.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yeah. She's the one that certified me before certification was a thing,
yeah,
big thing. You know, I mean, back then it was, you want to, if you want to be taken seriously
yeah,
as a reader, you had to get certified.
yeah, yeah,
So I went through all of that. Yeah.
yeah.
So.
It's bad luck if you got certified with Doreen Virtue. I'm sorry, I had to make this joke. It's like, oh.
Well, honestly, I did get a couple of certifications
I'm
too.
sorry.
I know. Hey,
I'm sorry, my friend.
it's okay. It's okay. You know, here's the thing. Everything, I know. Everything presents an opportunity for you to learn, right?
That's true. That's true.
Now, here's the thing about the nameless one. Her decks, each of those decks that she had created, you could use them for specific purposes, like more so than what the deck tells you. Like when you buy the box and blah, 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 it tells you all of that. When you take the course, you actually take the courses, you actually learn that these decks can be used for certain purposes. And I found a lot of it fascinating, how to work with the decks in multi-layers and all of that.
Plus, to be honest, I used to use those, the Masters, Ascended Masters deck, I think. And I had like a lot of weird stories connected to this deck, and like reading for people on the planes, and then those people calling me and going, "Oh my god!"
Yes,
It's
yes.
so weird. I had this one girl. She was like sitting next to me, bawling her eyes out, like she was crying. Was going like, "Oh my god! Like, what? Can I help you somehow? What's up?" And she was like heartbroken and like something about the boyfriend. And so we started chatting later, and I pulled these cards. I thought like maybe you feel better. Pull yourself a card. Let's see. Maybe there's a message. And she took my number later on, and she called me in Australia going like, "Oh my god, this message, do you remember me? I'm from the plane." And then she was telling me this whole story, you know, so it's interesting. And you know what I also think? If you're a therapist and people that expect you to be able to help others only when your life is sorted to perfection. Like,
right, exactly.
It doesn't work like this, right?
Right,
she could still create these decks, and they still workable decks, and they actually okay decks to use.
Yes.
And yeah, her energy somehow is attached to it. But I think if you resonated with the decks, if you could use them and you like them, like they're fucking okay decks to use.
Exactly, they are okay. You know, as a matter of fact, I pretty much have all of her decks. I don't like the Animal Tarot deck, but I have all of them.
Yeah.
You know,
exactly.
Because back then they were cheap. You know.
Yeah, they're affordable and available everywhere. You could buy them without. Yeah, totally agree. Yeah. Translated in probably every language in the world. Also, if you didn't speak English, you could buy Polish versions, and yeah.
So
so that's
and those are decks, believe it or not, that we didn't think of them having not being diverse. She does have one deck. Well, the Ascended Masters had a couple of people of color. I think every like some decks she tried to throw a couple. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna have to give her. You got to give credit where credit is due. I want to say that her Oracle decks were actually the first diverse decks that I came across. Back in the day, she was putting people of color in her decks before anybody else was doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. See, I never really thought about it from this perspective, and there you go. Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. So it's there if you want it to be there. Again, it's a choice that we can make. So again, it goes back to the publishers. If we want to see more diversity, let's see a true representation of the world around us. And like you said, where you live, okay, you know 10 people of color, but that's your world, that's your perspective. But I wouldn't expect you, and I'm going to be honest with you, I wouldn't expect you to write or create an Oracle deck that talks about Mother Earth and love of all of Mother Earth.
Yeah.
And when I open it up, I don't see any people of color in that deck.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
I just feel like you should rename that something else, because in my mind, that does not include the people of the earth.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
And that's
Okay.
why there's so many buts there, right? Because it's so
Yeah.
different, depends on from what angle you look,
Angle.
what you're making the deck of,
Right.
what are you including. If you just want to make a gay deck, like do it with
Yeah.
with gays, but also probably from different colors, right? Because
Exactly.
it's like, but yeah, no, it's interesting. It's definitely not a black and white position to take, and it takes a lot of empathy, a lot of just, I don't know, normality, I would want to say, like, fuck. It's, I don't know how else to call it, like, just
morality.
actually, it's just to be
ethics,
as inclusive as possible whenever possible, when it's, you know, and of course, at the same time, if you don't fucking resonate, you want to do whatever you want to do, maybe somebody will buy it, maybe people, and then it's up to us to have this power to choose to pay or not to pay, right?
Right. Now, I have seen complaints within the tarot community when there's been certain walkthroughs of certain decks and such, where people have commented and said, this deck doesn't resonate with me. I don't see myself in it. You know, I'm a straight white woman or whatever, and I don't see myself in this deck. And I'm thinking to myself, 99% of the decks out there are yours. You have to complain about this one not having you in it. Like, is it really just that important that you cannot even let us have just this one? You know?
Yeah, that's the discrepancy, right?
Yeah.
Just go, okay, for now, maybe just shut up and go and look at all the 180 other decks. And maybe when we have more 50-50, then we can go, hey, you, beautiful black artist, why don't you include any of the other people who are living around you in it, you know? But for now, there's just such a
the disparity is there.
It's just like, oh, please just go and turn around and go to the shelves and pick whatever you want, because they all depict you, right? Yeah, no, it's true. So listen, if we can move on a little bit to your practice, like your personal practice with tarot, and then also I would like to ask you about like your teaching, because I know that you teach as well, you teach classes. So your personal practice, how do you like to work with the cats? Because I kind of imagine that you work with the cats every day, not only because you work in the shop and stuff, but it's like part of I imagine it's part of your life. I just cannot see you without the deck.
Okay.
Prove me wrong, but tell us.
You're wrong.
Oh, shit. I hate being wrong, mate.
I know. I hate being wrong too. As I always say, as a Leo,
Leo,
I may not always be right, but I'm very rarely ever wrong. See that? Okay. All right. The tarot, as in practice, is not something that I use every day. I have actually grown away from needing to do that every day. I think what happens when you really spend a lot of time working with it, whether it's teaching, creating decks, doing different things, like it becomes part of you. I have noticed that I've been able to pull up cards in my mind already. Like I don't have to have a card in front of me. It's rare when I put down a spread. I think it's because I'm going to segue into, I have 2 classes that I teach. We review spreads, and at that time is when I would do a reading for myself. I have the students do a reading on me as well, like I'm their guinea pig. I've done a lot of work with the tarot, you know, inside and out. Now, every once in a while, and I'm saying once in a while, maybe a few times a year, I will sit down and work with a deck, you know, and, you know, I have a handful of decks that I want to work with right now. I just got the, what's her name? Robin Cole's Darkness
of Light?
No. Yes, I just got that deck, the Shadow deck. And of course the Falarcos deck. See, these are decks that I want to sit with and study and work with, okay? Like that. That's why I want to take my tarot studies.
And when you say like study and work, like you would be pulling cards and just kind of,
for me,
often these decks like Darkness of Light doesn't have a book, right? Falarcos has this little one. I know that Carmen is writing it, but it doesn't have a companion book. So that's just how you would work with the image. You would just pull
Yes.
a card and
See how it correlates to my life. See how I can get the image, the imagery to speak into my life, right? That to me is working with it, as opposed to just doing a 3-card spread, morning, noon, and night, or within, without advice or anything. Like, I like to work with decks like that a little bit deeper. How is this deck how is this card coming to life in my life, within my life? Like, how can I apply the lessons or the messages from that card into my life? Like, our favorite card of the Polarcos is the Tower card, being split wide open. I mean, just think about that. Not too many people can handle the energy of just look at that card. That woman is being split wide open,
Yeah. Seeing if I can find it. But you talk.
It's almost like a message of, we have to rip away this shell of yours that you have become so comfortable in, right? You have to lift yourself up out of this. And a lot of times we're holding onto that shell so tightly that we don't even know the difference between the shell and our true selves. Yeah. And yes, most of that time the process is painful, Yeah, that is just the epitome of it for me.
Yeah, and it's just this amazing also, always like whenever I look at this Rumi's quotation that the crack is where the light comes through.
Yeah.
It's just,
exactly.
It's empowering, it brings hope, but also it shows all the things that Tower carries.
The Tower is. But you see the stance of her arms?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's surrender.
Yeah. Openness.
You know what I mean? Look at that. That's surrender. I look at it, the stance of the legs for me. Like, she's not even on the ground, which means that, anything, your foundation, everything's just ripped out from under you. You're just done. You surrender. You have to give in to this. Okay.
Yeah. And I love how it's on her kind of lips also. Because it's kind of like you when you arrive renewed after this Tower experience, like, I think you speak differently, you
speak differently, you feel differently.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Right? Your sense of how you walk on the earth is different.
Yeah. Love this.
Exactly. I love it.
It reminds me when you were saying about your practice, and kind of like when I did my first interview was with Jessica Zinchuk. She did this story medicine tarot.
Yes.
And she was saying that her practice is always to like slow down, woman, slow down. She was awesome because she's like, I'm pulling like maybe one card for a week, sometimes for a month, to exactly do this, to like absorb the energy, work with this energy, like integrate the message that comes through.
Yeah.
And I love this. I do it often, but I'm the multiple deck users. Like, I just love using a lot of decks. But what I noticed that I repeat, like if I pull, let's say 3 cards, like I pulled, let's say Mysteries of Mary deck, I pulled 3 cards for my solstice reading. Then for the next however long it takes, I'm going to pull different cards to explain these cards to me. Like, sometimes using different decks, you get this different aspects, and you're like, oh, I didn't think about
that.
This one yet.
Yeah.
So that's sometimes, if for people, I say it for people who like to use a lot of decks, that they don't feel guilty that they just have to work with one card.
I know you have that course, and that has helped revive my tarot practice as well at times when I've got, because I do like to use multiple decks.
Yeah, and you have a lot of decks too, and you have access to many decks.
Yes.
You can access to any deck really, right?
Just about every deck, I do have access to it, access to a lot of them. But yeah, your course has been really good in giving, I guess you could say, giving one permission to use multiple decks in a spread, right? I mean, if you take, even if you take the same card from 3 or 4 different decks and look at them differently, even that. So yeah, that's like part of my practice. And I feel I want to get back to that, but I want to work with things slowly. But as I said, when I'm teaching and I'm doing this, sometimes I can get away from me right? And maybe that's one of the reasons I don't record as much on YouTube. I don't know how you guys do it. People who are putting stuff up every day, every week. I'm exhausted. And I sew and I dance, all of that, having a full life. But the tarot, yeah, while I don't pull a card every day, I do keep a journal that I write in a couple of times. I used to do that daily as well, but now it's just like jotting things down and all. I think when you get to a certain place of your own growth, you don't need to lean on the tools as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're there for you should you pull them up, but for the most part, you don't. Now with my tarotistas, it's required that they work with their deck every day.
Yeah.
You see, and they know this.
So tell us about the teaching. Like, so if, like, say, I want to study with you and I'm in Poland, can I do this? Or is it mostly for people who live in your city, or how does it work?
No, you can do it with me because right now I'm teaching on Zoom due to Ms. Rona being in town. We're not doing any face-to-face. Yeah, I know, right? Hey, I'm just, look.
Yeah, but we gotta do what we gotta do, right?
We're not gonna do this, okay, in class, okay? Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
They can sign up, right? So they can sign up for the
Yeah, you just contact me, send me an email, and I send you a Zoom link, and we do that. And my classes right now are not formally structured. Like I don't have a time period. So the two groups that I'm working with, we started this online classes when Miss Rona came to town and everything shut down because I've never taught online. I've never done readings online. I've always done everything in person. So this change for me is something that's very new, doing Zoom readings or phone readings, teaching that way. A lot of people wonder, like, does the energy translate? Does it? Yes, it does, once you have that. And it's new. It's a new field. It's a new realm for me. Yeah. You can see I'm not even sure about the lighting, right? I got this glare on my glasses here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, I'm still trying to work things out.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, that's exactly the point. Like, I think for many people, this has brought up that kind of possibility also, right, of expansion in some way, because it's something new we have to learn, and something maybe a bit uncomfortable in the beginning, but then it opens so many more possibilities, because now people from Europe, from whenever, can, for example, join your class, whereas before you wouldn't have them because they would be in person only, limited to where you were living. So I think that's pretty cool. So I'm going to link your email. Can I link your email?
Yeah, you can link my email. So yes, I'm in the process right now as we speak of developing a curriculum.
Just to structure it a little bit more for people online.
Yes. Because there are few of us out there. That's another thing as well. Those of us who teach who are not white are not often given a platform.
We
have to create our own. We're not often invited to a lot of the, the big school dances, if you know what I mean. So we have to work with where we are, with what we have.
But I think it's also now great with just internet in general, that the word can spread. And sometimes what I noticed, like, I've been also for a long time on YouTube, and I just had my first Zoom, the intuitive tarot reading. That was the first time on Zoom as well that I ran something. And like, I feel like with internet, it's great when you actually, like, people know you from the community, they know you as soon as you actually start saying that you're doing something like this, and it's possible for people to join. They don't have to live in your city. I think it spreads, it kind of goes. It takes time sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it spreads like hotcakes. Maybe use this time, be wise. You in now. But I think this is really fucking, why not? It's great.
I know. Exactly.
And you have so much to offer, like I would love to do an Orisha course with you. Or,
That is
like we could.
something I'm going to work on too.
Yeah.
I'm working on it now, an Orisha course. I did send an invitation to a few people within the community a few weeks ago. Actually, it's so bizarre, Kasha. Um, it was an Orisha 101 course, and it was held on May 20th, the Sunday before the shit hit the fan.
Oh.
And I invited people within this Tarot community, and they didn't come.
In your town, person to person, like it wasn't online.
It was online. It was
It
online.
was.
Yes, it was. I had a Zoom session set up, and there were people within the Tarot community. You know them. That's what I mean. And I invited them, and
Yeah.
they didn't come.
Maybe not interested in Orishas.
Well, they speak about it. That's why they got the invitation.
Ah, all right.
See?
Okay, I hear you.
Right.
All
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
So,
No comment.
right.
Or should we comment?
Well, right now, I'm telling you, here's what I'm going to say. They'll never get another invitation from me again. Ever.
Yeah. I'm going to introduce the audience. Hope people are still watching with us because we are bumbling. But we spoke a little bit before I hit the record button, and I have to say, like, I was never drawn to Orishas or your religion.
Mm-hmm.
And when you were talking, because I probably never had anyone talk about it the way you talk about it. And when you were talking about it, I was just like sitting there. I got a little bit one-on-one, and I was like, oh wow, it's fascinating. It's fascinating, but it's not as fascinating as a ooh, shiny little new diamond. It feels very deep and resonant, and somehow, I don't know, but so I would love to do something like this with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
When I do this again, I'm thinking about doing something maybe in a month or so. I will send you an invitation.
Please do. Yeah.
And it's just a Zoom course. It's a Zoom chat.
Yeah.
I talk about certain things pertaining to the Orisha. So everybody walks away with a different understanding. As a matter of fact, a few months ago, before everything was shut down, I had several of the tarotistas get an Ifa reading with my Babalao. I offered them that opportunity to get a reading with my Babalao, right? Because that's not something that happens by you calling up a metaphysical shop.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You sit with a Babalao, you meet with a Babalao through someone who takes you to the Babalao.
Maybe say who Babalao is, because people won't know.
Oh, Babalao is Yoruba for Father of Secrets.
Father of Secrets.
Yes. You like that?
Yeah.
Can you say Babalao?
Babalao.
No, see, now you have it. Okay.
What did I say before? Babalao.
Yes. Silly. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, my friends, I think we're going to wrap up. And would you like to say anything else while you on the spot? The light is shining on you. Is there anything else you would like to add, or?
No, I just want to say thank you to those who have been there with me from the very beginning. My first foray onto this YouTube journey was because of Christy of Dead Cheeky. You know what I mean? Christy. And my first live that I saw ever was Kelly Fitzgerald. And Tom Benjamin and we've been hanging, doing this back and forth for the past year and a half. You know what I mean? And then you have just been like my freaking sister. I mean, I'm serious. When I get a text message from you, it's like, oh my God, we're sisters. This is my blood right here. Whatever she's going through, I'm going through. Whatever I'm going through, she's going through. So I've always felt like you had my back in that, I just want to say, generally thank you to those who have been there, who supported me, who listened to me, that's been important.
Who learned from you as well. Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah,
those who have acknowledged me,
yeah.
right? So that's
Well, as my friend who said that, yeah, I want to say it, I think my friend who said that you one of those kind of like mythical, amazing, wonderful people, you know. I feel there is something, you know, in how you carry yourself, in your voice, in your amazing storytelling ability. And it was always like, if people of course don't know you, I will link your YouTube channel below and they can go and you can guys go and check the videos of how you even do a walkthrough on a simple tarot deck. Like, it's just a different experience. It's full of storytelling, and I find it really like inspiring, and the way you use words is just beautiful. So I'm very touched by what you said, and same goes back to you, you know, like, and I love that we can have an honest relationship and we can say things to one another and we can pull each other, you know, shit sometimes, or, you know, say like, maybe you overstepped a bit, or you said something, why
something,
did you
right,
say this, you know? So
right.
I like it, and I totally respect you as a friend, and it's really glad that you are in my life. So, and thank you for agreeing to doing this interview, because I hope that, you know, we mentioned a few things that just give people some food for thought. And
But yeah, I hope so.
yeah,
So
so
thank
thank you
you.
so much again. Thank you
You're
everyone for watching and for joining us, and I will see you another time. Bye.
welcome. Bye bye.